you know.
Oh.
So for number 1, we're going to write the equation of the parabola.
Yeah, let's do it.
We have a vertex at 0, 4.
Are these all gonna be like this?
Like that.
Is this gonna be what the test is like? Why is it so long?
Similar.
I already
I
grasped
just
the
explained
question.
that.
So which two are gonna be?
Oh my goodness. Listen.
Hang it out.
So then we have an axis of symmetry at y equals 4. So if the axis of symmetry is horizontal, then that makes this a horizontal parabola.
I thought. Why did I think the axis of symmetry's always been like that way?
Oh.
Oh wait, oh, we're
For
doing parabola.
hyperbolas.
I thought
Yeah,
about
this is a parabola.
hyperbolas, I was like, why
Yeah, I
is
know.
Oh,
it
yeah.
so
There's
great?
so many different things in this
Yeah.
chapter.
So parabola.
Really?
So horizontal parabola is x equals a times the quantity of y minus k squared plus h. So we need to fill in those things that we know. So first of all, we know the vertex. If the vertex is 0, 4, 0 is the h, 4 is the k. So we don't know a. We know k is 4, and then h is 0. So I'm not going to put plus 0 because it's not
Is that a little,
simplified.
like, line, like a blank line? Like, what's that?
Yeah, we're going to fill this in.
I thought I got a freaking 150 on this test.
150.
It tells us the latus rectum is 5. The latus rectum is one of the things that will tell you A. So the latus rectum and the distance between vertex and focus, or vertex and directrix, those are things that will help you find A.
We've been talking about lattice rectum in like 4 weeks.
So
I don't know.
if the latus rectum's 5,
1 over 4a.
then the A
I don't know.
is 1/5.
I have a question.
That's the distance between the directrix and the lattice, right?
Yeah, it's the reciprocal.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know, it's been a week, guys.
Now,
Leave me alone.
it also tells us that A is less than 0. So if A is less than 0, then that means A is negative. If A is greater than 0, that means it's
If
positive.
it's negative, does it really make a difference? Like, oh, the graph. Because it's just gonna be, it's an absolute value when you flip it, right? For the lattice, like, you can't have -5 for the lattice rectum.
Oh, yes, you can.
For the next one, it says write the equation of the vertical parabola.
Why?
Why did
So-
I ever bring it up?
Vertical parabola.
Why does he keep subscribing to this?
Dang it, PewDiePie.
Of that equation, what do I know?
You know the 1 over 6.
Yeah, I know the A, since the latus rectum is 6. I know A is 1/6.
Is anyone harder or easier?
What I don't know is H and K. It does not give you the vertex at all. It gives you the focus. So this one's a little bit harder. If the focus is at -2, 1, and the distance between focus and vertex is 1 over 4a, and we know a, then we can figure this out. So the distance, so let me just do like a super tiny graph. So we have a focus right here. We know that it's a vertical parabola and A is positive, so it's opening up something like this. What we need to do is figure out how far the focus is from the vertex, and that will bring us to our vertex. We know that the vertex is going to be below the focus because it's opening up. And how do we know that it's opening up? Because A is greater than 0, and it told us it was vertical. Okay. So what we need to do is calculate 1 over 4a. So I'm going to do 1 over 4 times a, which is a 1/6. That's 1 over 4 times a 1/6, that's 4/6, or 2/3. And then that reciprocal is 3 over 2. It's easier to think of it as a decimal, so what is that as a decimal?
I have to do a log division.
Really?
Yeah, I'm really bad.
You don't know half of 3?
Is it like 0.33? It's 1.5.
1.5.
Okay, you know what? I just had a rough day.
Nah.
5 minutes in early.
No, I'm just really bad at that
Yes.
overall.
Me too, honestly.
We all have our stuff. All right, so that means that the vertex is Where?
-2, 1.5.
kind of. So it's going to be 1.5 below the focus. So if the focus is at -2, 1, how can I go below this point?
-2, -1, 0.5.
Right. So if this point is at -2, 1, we're going to go down 1.5.
We're
Or,
gonna have a lot of decimals
or
on this
you
next
could just
one, too.
subtract 1.5 from the y value.
Yeah.
So
And
we're gonna
that
put
brings us to -0.5 in the y. But it stays in the same x value because, you know, they're in line with each other on the axis of symmetry. So -2, that's the x coordinate of my vertex. And then -0.5 is the y. So
Oh man, I already put a plus sign there.
I know, me too.
Gosh darn it, why would I forget?
Sometimes I put plus signs for no reason.
Oh, that's not good.
For the 1 divided by 2/3.
So the next one's an ellipse. Now, you don't have to graph this at all, but I'm going to graph it just in case you're one of the people that likes to graph things.
I graph them all.
So we have a major axis at -1, -5, and -1.
You look
5?
for the, like, the ovals.
So if the major axis, see how I put those points there, they're vertical of each other, that's going to make this a vertical ellipse. The minor axis endpoints are here at 2 and then -4.
I like forget how you can do ellipses, and that's a problem.
Okay. So the minor axis is a horizontal axis. The major axis is a vertical axis. So that means it's a vertical ellipse, and we would use this equation. So remember yesterday I said before you do anything to write the equation down.
Wait, so vertical y is always gonna go first, right? But like hyperbola.
Because it tells you that the endpoints of the major axis are vertical. Major axis is the bigger one. Major axis means the vertical or horizontal. So if it said that the minor axis was, endpoints were these, then the minor axis would be vertical, which means the major axis would be horizontal. Okay, so I wrote this down. I don't know anything in here yet, but I can find out. So let's find the center. There's a few ways you can find the center. If you graph it, you can just like connect these endpoints, and when you connect the endpoints, the point in that they intersect at, that's your center.
-1, 0.
Now, if you don't like to graph, you can just find the midpoint of any 2 points. So you could do -1 plus -1 over 2, and then -5 plus 5 over 2.
Sometimes when I count, I get like in the middle, like of a number, like I get like 0.5.
Yeah,
or
so you can
something,
do
I'll be,
this
like,
to
kinda
check.
confused.
Now the other thing that you can notice is if they give you endpoints, you should be able to see these and these are the same. The major axis is going to align with the x value of -1. The minor axis aligns with the y value of 0, giving us our center.
Oh, will that always work?
Only if they give you endpoints of both.
I hope they do.
So if they only give you endpoints of 1, then you can't do that. But you should be able to get 1 out of it. So if they give you endpoints of anything, you should get at least h or a k. So let's put this in. So -1 is h, so I'm going to put x plus 1 here. And then the k is 0, so instead of putting y minus 0 squared, I'm just going to put y squared.
So I forget how we count it, but like we just count. It's like 6.
There's a few ways you can do it. So a is this distance here,
So
or half of the distance between these 2 points.
5.
Yeah, so this distance here is 10, so that means that 2a is 10. If you count, you can see the distance from -1, 0 to -1, 5 is 5. So if a is 5, we put 25 here, underneath the y, because that's a vertical distance.
I always get confused on where to put it. And then
If it's
B
vertical,
is
put it under y. If it's horizontal, put it under
9.
x.
So B squared is 9 because 6.
Yeah, so b would be this distance right here.
So this would be 9.
Yeah, so that's 3. We put 9 down here. So like I said before, it's also half of this distance. So 6 is the distance between those endpoints. That means b is 3. Okay, write the equation of the circle with. So you need to know the equation of the circle, there's only one.
Ow.
We know the center, so we can plug that in. So this is x plus 1 squared plus y minus 3 squared.
I need to make like a formula sheet.
This is like for a circle. I forgot how to do these. Are these easy?
Well, this one's easy. If the diameter is 15, what do we use that
How
for?
did you get the equation so
Diameter.
fast?
So it would be 30, right?
No, other
Or
way.
half.
Yeah, diameter is twice the radius,
Yeah.
so the radius would be half.
7.5 times 7.5.
And then you would square that.
Yeah.
And then you
So
would
it's
square
like
it. So look,
51.
I'll do math. What's 5 times 5?
25. Why did I say 5?
What's 7 times 5?
35.
Plus 2.
Isn't it like 50 something?
Oh boy.
What's 7 times 5?
35.
7 times 7 is 49. So.
Thank you, Brayden.
What's 7 times 7?
49
Plus 3.
is 52.
Let's add all these up.
Oh my god.
5, 13.
12. 12.
See, that's why I fail.
So it's 56, 2, 5. There's 2 decimal places, 1, 2. So we're going to go 1, 2 and put a decimal place right there.
Wait, are we doing like significant figures or something? Because I'll drop out.
No.
I'm a high school dropout.
I'm a high school dropout, you know.
I only get A's, but
I only get
Nice.
A's in living life.
You
Can we just like move this test like Friday or something?
sure, let's do it.
I think it'd be great, to be honest.
Why do we have tests on one?
Do I get
Yeah.
10
We didn't
because
have
I'm
Friday. Oh my god, this square didn't go well.
Oh.
It's like this one.
All right, so hyperbolus.
Oh, did we do that already? 5?
We did 5. That's practice yesterday.
Oh, true. Yeah, you're good with 5.
Yeah, probably.
Nope. X minus 2.
Just go over it real
no,
quick
right.
again.
It's like the foci.
I'll do it on the board.
So we got foci at 6, -2, and -2, -2. If the foci are horizontal, whether they give you vertices or not, they do give you vertices, but even if they don't, you know that this is opening horizontally. So if the foci are horizontal, the hyperbola is horizontal. If the foci are vertical, the hyperbola is vertical. So since this is horizontal, we're using this equation. Don't forget that it's minus. We don't know the center, but we can find it by finding the midpoint of either set here. So either these two or these two. So I'm going to do the midpoint of these two. So 5 plus -1/2 is 4/2, which is 2. So that's the center. I don't have to find the middle of -2 and -2 because it's at -2. We'll put 2 here and then +2 for k. The distance from center to one of the vertices, that's a. So if my center is at 2, -2, and this vertex is at 5, -2, this distance is 3. So 9 would go here. Now the distance from center to one of the foci is C. So we know A is 3. This distance is 4.
7.
So what we have to do to find B squared is we do a little math. We do A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So A squared would be 9, B squared would be, I don't know, C squared would be 16. So 9 plus what is 16? 7. So B squared is 7. Okay. So for number 6, you're writing something in standard form.
I didn't know how to do this.
You have to complete the square.
Yeah, I knew that.
And
I
then-
wasn't getting far.
In addition to this particular question, you also want to study that worksheet that I gave you yesterday. So the first thing you want to do is put things in order. So put it in alphabetical order like it is here. And then if there's a constant, put it on the right side of the equation. What you need to do is complete the square with the two variables, y and x. So you're completing the square here, you're completing the square here. If there's a number in front of x squared, you would factor it out of all the x terms first. If there's a number in front of y squared or a negative sign, you would factor out that number or perhaps a -1 out of all the y terms. So if there's a number or a negative sign in front of one of the squared variables, you would factor that out of all of those variables. So real quick, so if you look at number 10, or number 1 on that worksheet I gave you, since there's a 2 here, we would factor that 2 out of all the x variables. And since there's a negative sign, we would factor a 1 out of the y variables.
Oh, I actually didn't take the 2 out of the 4. I don't know why.
Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. Now, we don't have to do that here. All we're going to do is complete the square. So you're going to take half of -8, which is, and then square it. Make sure that you add that to both sides. If there's a number that we had taken out, you would multiply it by that number first. So, for example, for this question, we would take half of 2 and square it, we'd get 1. We would add, not 1, but 2 to the other side. Okay. Because it's not really a 1. Like when you put the 1 here, while you put a 1 here, it weighted the left side of the equation by 2 because of this 2.
That's probably why I got it so much.
And then let's do this same thing here. So what's half of 4?
2.
And then square it.
4.
Just like.
There's literally a soccer word.
So add that to the other side. Okay, and then going back to, again, this worksheet real quick. Take half of 4 and square it, we get 4. But it's not a 4, it's a -4. So, because we factored out a -1.
It's still like being multiplied to the -1.
Yeah, it's like distribution.
Yeah.
It's like nothing.
Alright, so, anyhow, back to this. Once you complete the square and you get perfect square trinomials, rewrite these as binomials squared. And go ahead and simplify all of this. So, yeah, 7.
X minus 4 squared, and then y
X
plus
minus
2.
Yeah. And what is this? If it didn't tell you.
It is a circle.
Yeah, it is a circle. You know it's a circle because there's no numbers left
also
up here,
told us that
so you don't have to,
actually.
I know. But it didn't tell you that on here.
Makes sense.
Yeah. If there's numbers in front here, then it's not a circle. So if you had factored something out, like this one,
Do one in a circle.
Well,
Yeah.
our tests have to like fact. Will it be hard? Because these.
yeah, that's, yours will be different. Yours is probably not going to be a circle.
Ah,
This would be like a hyperbole.
Okay, like this.
honestly.
So what you would have to do after this is divide everything by 14. So when you divide by 14, the denominator becomes 7. This just becomes 14 equals 1. And this is a hyperbola because there's a minus sign here, and since x is first, or x is the positive fraction, it's a horizontal hyperbola.
See, it makes sense when you do it.
Are those going to be a line or not?
How do we know if the x or the y comes first?
So for this one, they were already like that, but in another question on here, I think, possibly, the one that's negative, you would put second. So
Oh,
like,
so if the x is
hey, let me look real quick.
I don't think it's one on the first page.
This one. See how it says -2x squared?
so you would put it.
You would put it second. So one of the things you could do for this one is just to start out, you can do,
What if you can't factor out
this.
3 though? Because like there's not the 3 can have 16.
it's 18.
Oh,
Yeah.
duh.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was illiterate.
Yeah. So one of the things you would maybe want to do for this would be to restructure it so that it's in that kind of order. Yeah, then you would take out a 3 out of these two, take out a -2 out of these two, and continue. Okay, good.